Okay, we'll start with the Enforcement Committee meeting for August 18th, 2014. We'll start with agenda item A, call to order. We'll now commence the Enforcement Committee meeting of the Contractors License Board. I'm Bob Lamb, the Enforcement Chair. Will the August 18th, 2014 meeting of the Contractors State License Board Committee come to order? Only board members who are members of the committee may sit at the table. Other board members who are in attendance must observe from the audience. If a quorum of the board is present, which it seems to be, those members who are observing cannot participate in the discussion. We will now do committee members and staff introductions. Identification by the members of the public is purely voluntary.
Steve Sands, Registrar.
Bruce Russ, Board Member.
Anna Rodriguez, Enforcement Staff.
Kevin Albanese, Board Member.
David Poe, Chief of Enforcement.
Frank Shutter, Board Member.
John O'Rourke, Board Member.
Pastor Herrera, Board Member.
Cindy Christensen, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Joan?
Linda Clifford, Board Member.
Ron Gibbons, California Strategy.
Peace Officer, Norwalk Investigative Center.
Peter Talon, Peace Officer, San Francisco Investigative Center.
Beverly Carr, Politico Group.
Dave Diaz, Board Member. Don Martini, Enforcement Rep.
Marquez, Department of Consumer.
Steve Grove, Enforcement Supervisor.
Tom Ellison, Frank County Fire Department. Deputy Fire Marshal.
Cindy Campbell, CSLB IT.
Steve Shop, IT.
Laura Vega, CSLB Legislative. Candace Collins, CSLB Public Works.
Steve Green, Public Affairs.
Heather Young, Enforcement Analyst.
Caleb Cameron, Enforcement Representative.
Hugh Henderson, Peace Officer Investigator.
Anthony Romero, Cook County Fire Department, Fire Prevention Code Enforcement Officer. Joseph Martinez, Peace Officer.
Ted Rieger, Dark Comfort News.
Claire Goldstein, CFW.
Steve Hart, retired.
Daryl Robertson, Contractor.
Ricky Markinson.
Phil Vermeulen.
Juan Beltran, Board Member.
Adriana Moran, Enforcement Supervisor.
Stella, Enforcement.
Gina Campbell, Office with Norwalk.
Doug Galbraith, Enforcement, Rick Lux, Public Affairs.
Melanie Bedwell, Public Affairs.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recognize all the enforcement staff that's here today. I know that several of you took an early flight, along with me probably, to get here from Southern California, and I'd like to welcome you all here and welcome the rest of the public that's here and also the fire enforcement reps too. You guys are always welcome wherever I am, as far as I'm concerned, and the peace officers too. So all of you, thank you very much for attending. At this time, I'm going to read some recognition awards we're going to give out. I'm going to read a little script for each one of those. The first one is for Caleb Cameron. Caleb Cameron was hired by the CSLB in September of 2013. Prior to his appointment as an enforcement representative, Caleb obtained a bachelor's degree in economics and was employed in the trucking industry as a dock operations lead. During the first 6 months of the 2013-14 fiscal year, Caleb performed an impressive 127 investigations for an average of 21 closures per month. As remarkable as his production has been, Caleb has referred 18 investigations to local prosecutors and an additional 33 to administrative action. Caleb has attributed his success to the clear direction he receives from his supervisor, Steve Grove, good move, and the job certification he achieves from the Louisiana Analytical, did I say something funny? To resolve disputes and provide effective consumer protection. On behalf of the Contractors State License Board, it is my pleasure to present you with a certificate, and I'll read that certificate when you come up here, Caleb. But let me read these two, because if I juggle these two, you're going to see some real nasty stuff, and that's not fun. I tend to drop things. Okay, next, this is for Anthony Romero. The Contractors State License Board would like to recognize Kern County Fire Department Engineer Anthony Romero. Mr. Romero partnered with enforcement staff to address multiple complaints made by Southern California Fire Department chiefs and captains involving several fire protection contractors that were impersonating firefighters to gain access to restaurants and conduct a service and repair of the automatic fire suppression hood systems. These unscrupulous contractors would then charge unsuspecting consumers hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in unnecessary repairs and upgrades. When it was believed that CSLB had no jurisdiction in these cases, Anthony Romero took a lead role in identifying business and profession code sections specific to fire protection, investigations that CSLB investigators could enforce. Mr. Romero also assisted in developing a fill-in CSLB complaint form that is now used statewide by CAL FIRE when filing a complaint. Mr. Romero was instrumental in training other fire department personnel to improve efficiency in the fire protection investigations. Romero has provided information and investigation reports to support license revocations, accusations, and citations, with more cases pending. On behalf of the Contractors State License Board, it is my pleasure to present you the certificate when you guys come up. Anthony Romero and Caleb Cameron, would you please come up, join me up here? First of all, I'm gonna go ahead and read the certificate, each one individually. Caleb Cameron, your outstanding productivity, efficiency, and professionalism distinguish you as an exceptional member of the Contractors State License Board Enforcement Division and demonstrate your dedication to California consumers, the construction industry, and in meeting CSLB's objective of protecting the public in matters pertaining to constructions. And I'd like to personally thank you for your service and your outstanding work.
Thank you very much.
Anthony Romero, your efforts to combat fraudulent activity related to fire protection contractors and ingenuity and diligence in working towards license revocation and unscrupulous contractors who pose a threat to the public are exceptional. CSLB appreciates your hard work, dedication, and professionalism and is proud to partner in your consumer protection efforts. Anthony, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, don't put the rows between.
And just one at a time. If you step out to the side, Cal, we'll give it to Anthony first. And then they'll switch.
You'll be famous, Ken.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a round of applause. Anthony, would you like to say a few words and explain to us some of the things you've been doing? I mean, I know I read a script, but it's always good to hear it from the person that's actually doing the work for us. I appreciate it.
Yes, good morning. First of all, with everything that's been going on, what I've learned, I'm kind of like the newbie on the block. And everything that I've learned here came from CSLB. Joseph Martinez has been an incredible person to look up to. And with everything that he's taught me and what I've seen, along with what I've learned, it's been progressing. So what I've been seeing throughout the state is how the communication effort between both entities have been increasing. And fire departments, or AHJs, I should say, have been able to understand what has been going on with what in their districts and how to enforce and help CSLB trying to understand and also understand what AHJ is looking at too. So by both of us talking, we've been able to get these contractors that are basically fraudulently scamming our customers. And I take that pretty serious. I think everybody here as a peace officer, along with myself, made that oath. And my oath is I will protect the citizens of California. And as a military person, I do protect the United States and I will stand that ground. So now it's been a increasing progress. Currently I'm in the process of dealing with another person impersonating a state fire marshal official and Kern County Fire Department. So we're in process of dealing with somebody right there. But I'm still keeping CSLB alongside because you're my go-to people. And I want to make sure that I keep that friendship continuously. So, thank you.
You too, Anthony. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Last week, Chief David Fote had the chance to speak to a group of. What? Oh, sorry. You don't have it in here. Okay, I apologize. I was getting ahead of myself again. At this time, we'd like to open a discussion of public comment. Anybody who'd like to address the committee may come forward, please, at this time.
Thank you. My name is Darrell Robertson. I'm here from Southern California to speak for about 80 of my colleagues in the area. And I'd like to commend the enforcement of the CSLB throughout the state of the great job that they do. But I'm also here to say that in the Southern California area, there's far much more work that still needs to be done in that area. One of the things I'd like to bring to the board's attention in regards to just simply reporting unlicensed activity. It's far more easier currently to report a licensed contractor than it would be to report an unlicensed contractor. Meaning that you could go to your website currently and simply file the complaint against the licensee right online. But to do that to report an unlicensed contractor, you have to go onto the website, print out a form, manually fill it out, and then fax it. And faxing is sort of going to fall the way of the pagers these days. I mean, everybody's it's sort of a dinosaur. So anyway, if we're serious about reporting these things, that's something that's simply that I see that being simple to change and adjust and really say that, hey, we're really serious about illegal or unlicensed contracting, in the Southern California area. And it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Back in 2007, when we had the real estate crunch, there have been a lot of companies that have popped up, investment companies that have purchased foreclosed homes. And their main mandate was to look for unlicensed contractors and to do their remodels and to resell those homes. And they break the law every single day. There's no workers' comp being paid. There's no taxes being paid on them. And this has been a huge problem in taking away business from licensed contractors who would have the opportunity to possibly do some of that work. And I'm just asking the board here today, and I had a good conversation with Dave before we started here, and I'm looking forward to talking to him even further. I just really wish the board would really focus more on not just the sting operations, which I'm sure they do very well in certain areas, but there's not a day that you can't just simply drive through areas of Southern California and see illegal construction going on. I'm also asking that you work more with the local building department, where they actually are more proactive and they are actually in the areas. They can drive through an area and actually see when work is going on that has no permit, and they will actually put a fine and a stop work order on that as well. But one of the things that they're also seeing is that the people who are doing the work are unlicensed, uninsured contractors doing that work. But there's no interaction with the board, with the CSLB to stop that. They're only defending one end of it, and that's for the city and permit fees. So anyway, I'll be talking more with David regarding this, and thank you, and I thank you for the good work that you're doing, and we're just asking that in the Southern California area that you really, really concentrate and talk to some of us and find out what some of the problems are and start dealing with them. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'd like to point out, though, that we have been partnering with The building officials, past chairman Jim Miller is the building official in the city of Big Bear Lake, and he's been instrumental in the past of getting us involved with them and help coordinate our efforts in that regard. So we are aware of that. As far as the reporting, that's something we can look at with our cool programmers, so.
Rob, I can actually address that.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Rick Lopes, Chief of Public Affairs. We're actually going to pull up the website real quick and show you. It's not a perfect system, but there actually is a way you can report online unlicensed activity. So, and for the people watching online, we can just briefly show you if you go to our homepage. So just give us a moment. We're kind of winging this. Okay, so here's the homepage right here. In the first paragraph, right in the middle, as Keith's pointing to the left, it says report unlicensed activity. So right there on the homepage, you can go to it. And we're not going to click into this, but it says, how can I report unlicensed activity? So go ahead and Keith, go into that one. That shows the different counties breakdown, and there's a link to a form there. That's the form you fill out. It's actually a fill-in form, so you could fill it out and save it on your computer. And then down, if you see the addresses, if you're in Northern California, Central California, or Southern California, you see an email address link. All you need to do is to click that link, attach the form to it, and email it to us. So we have slowly trudging into the 21st century as far as letting us know. And we're planning with the new website launch, which we'll talk about in the public affairs meeting. But we're actually, we will work on making that more of a fillable, make it a little bit easier. But you can, as of right now, you can submit things over the internet. Thank you.
Well, for on the fly, that was excellent. Thank you very much. And they are very cool, you can tell. Yes, sir. Pastor.
The other thing that we did, and David probably could give us more information, the partnership that we did with that West Los Angeles person that came to complain about the unlicensed activity in the west side, we did that this year and last year too.
We did, and one thing I'm looking forward to exploring, Mr. Robertson, is the partnership we just entered into with the city of Compton. They're providing us city-owned properties. They're going to provide code compliance officers to go out and assist us in running leads and identifying violators at the permit counter. So we could, hopefully that'll be successful, and we could expand it elsewhere.
Very good. I believe you had a comment?
Yes, I did. My name is Barbara Daigle from Discovery Bay. My husband is a licensed contractor. We're a corporation. I'm financial officer and CAD designer for it. We've been in business for 32 years as a licensed contractor. My husband's been in the trade for 40 years. Came out of a union carpenter, framed 100 homes before he ever became a contractor, more than qualified. We've never taken, we don't take deposits. We generally use our funds to get the project started and get significantly into draw levels before we even ask the client for any money. Done over 100 custom homes, remodels, condos, large custom homes with grateful customers. Unfortunately, in 2010, we engaged work with a client. That's not the matter before the board. What happened, we did a good job. The unfortunate thing is that there were personal things that entered into her situation. Her husband had a stroke. Her daughter moved into the house while we were remodeling. Threw tools outside, locked us out of the house, and she stepped in and said, well, if you just get the house finished, we got the final in the house. She locked us out. It wasn't a matter of us ever abandoning a project or ever not willing to finish the project. The things left were few. She made them sound like mountains. She planned a lawsuit. She called CSLB instead of finally paying for us. We had $34,000 on the books owed from after finishing. We got a notice from the CSLB that we were having, a complaint had been issued. We tried to work with the person. We responded to CSLB immediately. When things came up, we tried to talk to someone at CSLB. That's my problem. No one at CSLB would talk to us. Literally no one would talk to us except for Ellen Brittain. Sean Balin would not talk to us. He said he would. He talked to the client. He would not talk to us. So a framework for a complaint was filed. And I understand that you're diligently trying to pursue bad workmanship. But we're talking about a company that for 32 years has had no complaints. We're talking about an incident coming up, and my husband has a license, our corporation is a licensed contractor doing good work. approaching a board that licensed our company and licensed my husband, I question, do you intend to license bad contractors and therefore that's why you approach this as though everyone's doing bad work? Or do you acknowledge that you have good contractors out there who are doing good work and deserve to be spoken to? Okay, so we go back to 2012. Started in 2010, we're going to 2012. The complaint is filed and we ask to speak to someone. No, we don't do that. What we do is we've talked to the client and we're building a case. And we're going to send investigators out and they're going to tell us what they find. So it goes February, March, April, May, June. On June 19th, I got a letter from Sean Balin that when the report was finished, he'd contact us. Wrong. No one will contact us. July, August, September, October. October 16th, we get a letter giving us 10 days to reply to all issues and prove our case and submit all documents or we were out. We do this. We do it in 4 days and send it to the CSLB. 3 months go by and make a determination that we need to proceed by legal means to resolve this. In your documents for this meeting, there are examples of how your enforcement works. One of them on page 4 that I printed says that an investigator settles a roof dispute on-site negotiation. Sacramento YC investigator arranged for a contractor's representative, a building inspector, the subcontractor did the installation, the homeowner to meet. Oh, that's great. We asked for that. Forget it, wasn't going to happen. No one would talk to my husband or work with him. If anyone had stopped and done this and said, what's going on, Mr. Daigle? He would have said, I have a contract with the client. Everything was presented that we saw that needed to be done. They deleted large areas and said, we don't want to touch that. Don't touch that, don't touch this, don't do that, don't do that. The investigators went out and said substandard work was performed. We go on from 2012 till 2014. We not only have not been paid the balance of the funds, it has cost us $25,000 to defend our reputation and to defend the project and to meet with the client. In June of this year, we finally got her to agree to meet with us on site with her expert examiner or her expert witness and with our expert witness. Both expert witnesses went through with our contract, item by item through the whole house. Her expert witness leaned over to my husband and goes, can't you help me find something? We can't find anything wrong. Your expert witness found all kinds of things wrong, but knew nothing of our contract, knew nothing of what was disallowed. Her expert witness walked us outside and said, this deck is terrible. My husband said, I didn't do the deck. Oh. Well, we'd like to show you some siding. I didn't do that. It was never done. She said, don't do that. We went around the whole house like this. The floors complained to be substandard and cupping because she didn't turn PG on when she wasn't in the house. It wasn't substandard, it wasn't cupping. It's a live solid wood floor that will move with humidity and the environment. If it were caulked, when it got tight and dried, the caulk would push up. So it was done in a beautiful way. Even her witness said, beautifully done. The cabinet's beautifully done. She complained to you that 3 slabs of granite were not used. It was 2 slabs of granite that all she would agree with. She says, I won't pay for them. We paid for them. We tried to get her whole house finished. She wanted a small kitchen. She doubled it. We worked with her on everything. I did designing for no charge at all. The gentleman looks at the granite and said, beautiful job. And you did this with 2 slabs. It needed 3. She wouldn't pay for 3. She didn't pay for anything. We paid for that. And CSLB wouldn't even speak to my husband about it. So my public comment, wanting to go on record today, my reason for coming here, my husband isn't here because he's trying to find a house for a client who has to be in by September, and we're very grateful for work. We treat every client in every home as though it's our own. We have people grateful for working with us. My husband's reputation is wonderful down there. People don't have him on their watch-out list. But we come to the CSLB that licensed him. And the lack of response except for Ellen Bertain, the only person who spoke to us here and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Daigle, I wish I could be of more help, but I'm not in that department." An investigator who wouldn't speak to him. This needs to go on record. I think you need to be as responsible to those who are doing bad work and taking care of that and helping people not to be swindled. I read the cases where they paid lots of money up front. We don't collect a dollar. We can be $40,000 in house before you submit a draw, taking care of the clients. But you are lacking in the area where you will not speak to a licensed contractor in good standing. Thank you.
Well, I would like to apologize on behalf of the committee for the issues you've had. Chief of Enforcement David Fote, sitting to my right, your left, indicates that he will respond to you within the next 10 days.
I wish I knew his name 2 years ago. The judge in the last mediation on July 12th looked at the lady and said, "Walk away. There's no money here." But because of you backing her as a CSLB, she thought she had $150,000 she was going to recoup. On a $190,000 job, we were going to work for free and pay her back $150,000 for good work done and a beautiful job. And all the things that aren't done in her house is because she said don't do them. And she locked us out. We were never not available. So thank you for the courtesy of listening.
Okay, any comments from the committee? Seeing none, we'll continue. Last week, Chief David Fote had the chance to speak to a group of 150 attendees at an event hosted by Pacific Gas and Electric Company, where they announced a new excavation safety standard. This new standard will ensure that contractors doing excavation work for PG&E demonstrate a commitment to safe digging. We are pleased that staff continues to partner with public utility companies in an effort to protect both consumer and employees from performing excavations. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and continue to agenda item C. The Enforcement Division continues to focus on training opportunities for staff. At the April 24th board meeting, the board approved developing training that would assist peace officers in establishing strategies and enhance prosecution of construction-related crimes. Today, Chief David Fote will provide an overview of the proposed peace officer training curriculum for the committee's consideration. David?
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. If we could turn to page G1. What we provided to the committee is an outline of proposed training for our peace officers. We're very fortunate to have at least 10 of our positions filled, and the peace officers that we've hired have come from different walks of life. We've had some that were a police officer at a local level, others are parole agents, parole officers, correctional officers. And what we've done is we've met with them and we've put together a training that will provide the background that they need to become experts. And when I say experts, I'm talking about a recognized expert statewide in the investigation of elder abuse, the ability to handle complex criminal investigations, not contractors that have made a mistake or did a bad thing, a truly bad contractor that's engaged in a criminal scheme to defraud consumers. And also understanding the benefit that workers' compensation violations can play in getting a case filed. And I'm very pleased that we've had a number of our Southern California and our Northern California peace officers that came to the meeting this morning in support of the training curriculum. What you'll see on page 2 is the goals for the unit. And one thing the board's had for many years is a special investigations unit. And historically, the SIU has been comprised of peace officers, and we're recommending that that continue. We also have a plan in place to hire a supervisor that will supervise the peace officers. That'll provide more standardized training. They can learn from each other and more consistency. But in the interim, we have put together a plan, and I wanted to quickly go over that here this morning. And the first part of it is what we call our monthly, well, actually, the first part of it's going to be tomorrow. And what we've done, and Doug Galbraith is here. Doug, put your hand up, please. I think you all know Doug. He's our outstanding trainer. retired CHP captain, well-respected by staff, and he's taken on a lead role in putting this training together. And tomorrow, all of our peace officers will be present for a 6-hour training course. And what Doug and I are going to provide to them is just some background of CSLB investigations, how that can open the door to talk to the contractor. We heard this morning that perhaps we have some staff that it could be a learning opportunity as to the need to talk to the contractor early on, how the administrative authority that we have can open the door to gaining intelligence that can help with a criminal investigation when appropriate. But understanding the sections of law that are relevant to the cases that we work, we put together a plan, and I'll compliment Doug for putting together a checklist that's very specific as to the steps you need to take in performing an investigation when it relates to someone that's been defrauded, someone that's relied on a statement to part with their money. For me, I look at it as theft by false pretenses. They were convinced they needed to pay for something that they didn't, and they got taken advantage of. We have other cases where the elderly getting violated or getting taken advantage of, and certainly we have a lot of unlicensed practice that needs to be addressed. So the first part of the training is going to roll out tomorrow, 6-hour training course. We've also been conducting monthly training sessions, and they've been very informative. I've been part of those. I've learned a lot from the peace officers. I think they've learned a lot from each other. We're proposing we continue those monthly meetings, that we bring in speakers from local DA offices to talk about what they want to see in their office when we're filing a case with them. We've continued to work very closely with the California District Attorneys Association, and most of you have met Elise Farrell and Human Husseinian, they're deputy DAs from Riverside County. They put together a training module in September, I believe it's September 22nd through the 24th, and it's specific to CSLB cases. It's specific to investigating construction-related crime. And then finally, we have the Division of Investigation. We met with Mike Gomez, the chief at Department of Consumer Affairs last Friday, and he reaffirmed his commitment to providing the opportunity for our peace officers to participate in their training, which is defensive tactics and other law enforcement skills and techniques that will certainly benefit them. So that's the four areas that we're wanting to pursue in the next 12 months.
Okay, are there any comments from the committee? Ms. Stewart?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I was really impressed with the training program that you're putting together, and also our trainer, who's very, very good and concise for your peace officers. And I was struck by the training module, particularly the interview techniques. And I was reading in the cases that you presented in your next section of one of your investigators that had actually videotaped the consumer, because apparently the elderly person was either had dementia or was in the early stages of dementia, and in order to get his or her statement, they decided to videotape the person's complaint. And I thought that was very, very interesting, and I don't know if that evidence is acceptable in the courts, as I guess as long as you get it accepted by the consumer, it's allowable for you to videotape the consumer as far as evidence. The other thing is that as far as the interview techniques, I don't know if you work with Adult Protective Services, who has a lot of experiences working with the elderly. Since I know your focus is going to be with the elder abuse cases, I don't know if you're working with them to kind of see what type of techniques they've used in order to get the best information from the victims themselves.
Absolutely. We are working with Adult Protective Services, and I believe it's Deidre Green. Deidre's been quite active, and it's generated quite a lot of work for her. But they are a very good resource for us. In turn, we're a good resource for them.
Any other comments from the board, committee? I apologize. Okay, with that, I'm going to need a motion. The enforcement. Oh, you have public comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Hart, and I've used this board before in 1986 with some glued sprinklers in California, and I used your investigation unit for 1 year. At that time, there was 3 investigators and Larry McNeely. And we got a conviction. He got 5 years, got his license revoked. One of the things that I didn't hear was an investigation or a enforcement education program for the local AHJs, building and fire. And after our case, which started in Monterey and took 13 other counties, we had Senator Mello do 1106 and 1107, which established the felony statute. And 1106 was the study, and 1107 was the felony statute that's now on the books. One of the problems that we saw early on was that local jurisdictions are dealing with building codes and fire codes, and this is building and fire. And it's hard to get out of that gear and into the B&P and the Contractors License Board regulations. And we used a document in our training program that I doubt if any of you have seen it, because it's not published anymore, but at that time, it was very useful. And yes, they still had the large book by LexisNexis that had everything in the world. But when it comes to the local jurisdiction and the enforcement of B&P codes, 7044 for owner builders and stuff, it was easy for them to use. And I think for a period of time, it helped. And I would suggest that you maybe go back to a 90-page document or even less, update this to the current B&P sections that are appropriate for a building and fire department to help in the enforcement and understanding of contracting law. It's part of sharing the enforcement capabilities with other agencies and to make those other agencies more efficient in the way they deal with crimes such as this. And I would just hope that you would look at this as an opportunity to have another tool in your toolbox. And you can say, yes, you can go to your website. You can go to Google and find anything in the world. But it's hunting for it that's the problem and the time that it takes. Whereas if you have a little book like this, you start learning those sections, 7026.12 and so forth, that help the local jurisdiction to do a better job of understanding, this is why it's not right. He hasn't got a building permit, he hasn't got this and that, and it's not just our problem, it's a state contractor's license violation. So I'd hope you'd understand and maybe look at that, and if I can help in any way, I'm just down the road, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, any other comments? All right, we're going to need a motion. The Enforcement Committee is being asked to present the following recommendation to the full board for approval. Approve the training curriculum for the peace officers that would include peace officer module training, monthly training sessions, consumer protection training provided by the California District Attorneys Association, and quarterly defensive tactics training provided by DCA's Division of Investigation. Do I have a motion? So moved. Second. This motion and a second. On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there any further public comment on this, on the training module question? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item D. Chief David Folt will now provide the enforcement program update. David?
Thank you. You turn to page 1, we have a vacancy update, and you'll see that as of August the 1st, we had 20 vacant positions. Most of those have a request into the department to hire someone. The others, we have recruitment in progress. What we've done is in the enforcement division is we've invested time and training into our staff, and in doing that, we want to provide them promotional opportunities, and because of the training and the high performance of the staff, they are promoting within the ranks, and that leaves a vacancy behind them. And something else I wanted to make the committee aware of is we continue to have difficulty recruiting and retaining in high cost of living areas, specifically the Bay Area. If you want to rent a one-bedroom apartment 30, 40 miles out of San Francisco, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $1,500 or more. And one of our, I understand, one of our top investigators we recently hired, Jennifer Miller, I don't know if any of you have heard of Jennifer, but she may be relocating now because of the cost of living. So it's a continuing problem that we have, but we are seeking out qualified candidates, doing the best we can to fill the positions as quickly as possible. On page 2, I have an update on the intake and mediation centers. You'll see that at the top of the page, this fiscal year, July through August, almost $9 million has been returned to injured parties. And injured parties are consumers, but also contractors often that weren't paid by a prime. And we're very pleased at that number and the success that we continue to have in assisting the parties in resolving disputes. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, you know we've done a lot of outreach to the pool industry, and we've worked very closely with them to help them clean up that industry and resolve problems when they occur. And you'll see the first 2 highlights exemplify the success in that outreach. I don't know the cases specifically, but I can tell you that we've got 2 pool remodels that went very bad. And on the first one, we had, I guess, $22,000 returned to the homeowner. So both parties were able to move on. What we do when we look at these cases, we ask ourselves, is it a contractor that made a mistake, did a bad thing, or is it truly a bad contractor? And if they're a contractor we can work with, we want to resolve it. On the second highlight, the deck was reconstructed, it sloped into the house, had to be fixed. Again, the contractor paid restitution. At the bottom of the page, we included a heating and air conditioning highlight in it. And 6 years after the work was done, the contractor was willing to go back, obtain a permit, and get it done right. And this is a good example, though, of the program that we put in place within this industry to encourage contractors to get the permit initially, and when they don't obtain the permit, for the consumer to have a simple way to notify the contractors board so that we will look at it, we'll go out and investigate, and if warranted, we would send an expert out to tell us what needs to be done to comply with permit requirements. I'm not sure that it's up on the website today. Rick could probably speak more to it, but what we're going to be putting on the website is information on the benefit to a consumer when the permit is obtained, the cost savings they will enjoy if they do that HVAC installation appropriately. And if they've had an installation that wasn't done right, again, they can file the complaint, and we are requiring the contractor to go back at his or her expense to get the permit and do any work that's necessary to comply with the code requirement. At the top of page 3, another strong highlight shows that the construction industry is comprised of solid business owners. When you see that a general manager that subsequently became licensed was willing to go back and take care of a problem with the prior employer's business. Very gratified to see that, and made $4,000 in repairs. At the middle of the page, it's another scam that we're keeping a close eye on, and that's where you have a stoppage in your home. You call out someone to snake your line, to unclog your drain, and they're using these cameras to go into the line, and they're claiming that it's broken or that a root has gone through it and is plugging it up. And oftentimes we're finding that that's a false statement. And that's what you see, in this one here, where the contractor was willing to, I guess, forgo it. But we're going to need to monitor that contractor to make sure that it's not an ongoing problem, because the consumers just don't know. You trust the person that's telling you that you have a problem when in fact you may not. And with the investigative centers, the focus is more on investigating for administrative violations of law, but fiscal year to date, they have recovered a very impressive $3.5 million. And the first highlight, we included that because it shows that if you're a licensee, in this case, the licensee was a subcontractor to an unlicensed contractor, you will be held accountable for the defective work that you performed. And if you were to aid and abet or associate with an unlicensed person and allow them to get that contract, we will hold the licensee accountable for any harm that occurred on that contract. A little bit earlier, regarding the success with on-site negotiation, we still use it on a more of a limited basis. We work very closely, though, with contractors when we can go out to the job site and resolve what we want to do so. I believe Pastor talked a little bit about the elderly woman with dementia and the need and the benefit, and I get video recording the statements. It's so necessary to do that. And one of our peace officers that put this case together is with us today. And at the bottom of the page, you see where he was able to include criminal violations regarding workers' comp violations and also filing a false document. And why that's important is you need to know what the focus is of the DA you're looking to file your case with. And often it can be to file with the workers' comp violation because you have the California Department of Insurance, the program where they have a $30 million grant program that pays for prosecution of workers' comp. And if you can get to that prosecutor, they can add other violations such as the consumer-related violations that are so important to all of us. So Peter, raise your hand. Good job. At the top of page 5, kind of an interesting case. It's a San Diego unlicensed contractor that caused a lot of harm. Jose Hernandez caused over $200,000 worth of harm, and he's now participating in a work furlough program to try to pay it off. So he's going to be there for quite some time. I'm not sure how well they pay, but that's what's so distressing when consumers pay too much up front, and attempting to get the money back can be very difficult. And on the bottom of page 5, it's another one of our peace officer highlights. John Anderson's not with us today, but it was something that, it shows his diligence in preserving the interview with an 81-year-old victim. And the reason why we will do that, though, is one, it preserves the testimony, but also it can be very compelling when you go down to meet with a prosecutor to show them the video, to show them that this consumer did have dementia and could have made an informed decision. And this contractor really definitely committed a criminal offense in taking the money. On page 6, where it's titled Justice Served, a Notorious Unlicensed Offender. And this Mr. Avatongo has been around for quite some time, as you will see. We've received 44 complaints against him. He's a ruthless repeat offender. It was quite interesting. I was in a meeting with Human Husseinian, who was the prosecutor of this case. And again, he's one of our trainers and a strong partner of the Contractors Board. And he goes, I got to stop right now. The jury's coming in with the decision. And this was the case. He was so excited about this. And I'm pleased to report that Mr. Avatongo has received 104 months in custody. Good. So we just learned that this morning. So that's very, very important. And this finally, we have an undisclosed principal, and this is something we're looking at very carefully. I'm sure you recall that the board directed enforcement staff to establish what we call a waiver application task force to look at whether we have suspect waiver apps. Do we have situations where people shouldn't be on a license? They're not on our records, but they're on the corporate documents, so they're actually running the business. And it is a problem. I am pleased to let you know that on August the 1st, we did establish that task force. We have 2 investigators assigned to it, and we're working closely with industry partners such as RMO Agency and others to identify suspect contractors, but also if there's a deficiency in the way that certain people are applying for a waiver app. I don't know that there is yet, but we're looking at it very closely. If we move to page 9, I just really want to thank and applaud the enforcement staff for continuing to achieve the board goals. As you will see at the bottom of the page, they're continuing to average appropriately closing 10 cases per month, and that's so important for us to manage our incoming caseload. As far as settling complaints, the board goal was to settle 30% of the licensee complaints, and settling them by having the work corrected by the contractor or restitution paid. I guess fiscal year to date, we're averaging 42%. Overall, with licensee complaints, the board goal was to disposition 70% of them. That's either that because somebody's paid restitution, or perhaps small claims court, or our arbitration program is the appropriate forum to achieve that resolution. The goal was 70%, we're at 71%. And then finally, the board goal was to disposition all complaints with the exception of 100 of them within 270 days of receipt. And we've included a bar graph, and you'll see that with the exception of July, where we had 122, we've been below that 100 for the entire fiscal year. So it's really a test to the diligence our supervisors, such as Mr. Grove and others, have had in working with the staff, to meet with the staff, to help them with the more difficult cases so that we can reach the appropriate conclusion within 9 months. So we're pleased that that continues. On page 11, we've included a chart as to our mandatory settlement conferences. One of our goals this year is to continue to expand them. We don't have enough in some of the outlying areas to justify an administrative law judge traveling to the area. However, we are expanding them by allowing the parties to attempt to resolve the citations through a telephone conference, which is showing some success. And again, the mandatory settlements are focused on citations where the order of correction, meaning to pay money to a consumer, is not in dispute, but the allegations alleged and the civil penalties assessed is in dispute. And if we can lower the civil penalty, resolve the citation, we're looking for an opportunity to do that. On page 12, an update on our stings. We had a telephone conference with a number of our supervisors, and they've really taken to looking for an opportunity to target more of those unlicensed operators that harm the consumer that result in a complaint at a sting operation. So that's something we're really focusing on. Instead of just looking at the Craigslist or maybe somebody that came to us through an advertisement, which could be on perhaps administratively or with other avenues, to focus on those contractors that have caused harm. And so it's going to be one of the breakout sessions at our supervisor meeting that's scheduled for September 3rd and the 4th, is to look for putting a plan in place where we can, one, identify more of these contractors that still have an active phone number. That's been one of the problems. But also we can report back to the investigative centers on the success that we've enjoyed in calling them out. Last, I guess it was this week, we had a meeting with the Labor Enforcement Task Force in this room, and the meeting was very interesting. They're looking for additional efficiencies by consolidating the Labor Enforcement Task Force function with the Joint Enforcement Strike Force. They're two separate task forces. They do different things, but there are ways that the training and administrative support and the statistical reporting could be consolidated. So that sounded, I believe, real good to us. Also, in this for the next year, they're going to look to publicize more of the successes that they have with the sweeps, which was something great to hear, and continue to work with our industry partners on identifying the really bad contractors that are not just cheating in one area, but cheating in many areas. The reason the LETF is important to the Contractors Board is because it enables us to go after the larger contractors that are paying in cash. There's no deduction statement. They may be reporting their employees to the workers' comp carrier for premium fraud, but also what you see a lot of on public works jobs is they're not paying prevailing wage. They're cheating. They have separate sets of books. And so by working with LETF, we're able to address those issues effectively. And on page 14, we've got a pie chart for you. And what's important, though, is that the targets that we're focusing on, we have over an 80% hit rate. So we're not disrupting businesses that are playing by the rules. We're truly finding those that need attention, need to correct a business practice, and when appropriate, need disciplinary action. And just to wrap up, we have an overview of the training that we put together. I want to thank Bob Lamb for opening the door and giving us the encouragement to put this together, the various modules. And again, Doug has played a lead role with all of this training.
It was Doug, not me. Doug did it all.
Okay.
Okay, is there any public comment on David's report? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item F, Predatory Service and Repair Task Force update. At the April 24th board meeting, the board was asked to consider directing staff to partner with district attorneys, the Better Business Bureau, and industry partners to establish strategies and develop protocol to search and perform criminal investigation of construction-related violations committed by predatory HVAC contractors. Chief Folk will provide an update on the Predatory Service Repair Task Force.
Sure. Well, what we have is all the peace officers are focused globally on service and repair scams in that investigation. As far as the more specific task force, though, we have groups that are operating in the heating and air conditioning industry that are using boiler room tactics. They're very aggressive, and they're literally making millions of dollars ripping off consumers throughout the state. And you probably saw the press release for two of them that are now in LA County Jail being held on $1.3 and $1.4 million bail. It's a huge problem. The majority of the entities that are being referred out of the boiler room are not licensed. We initially reached out to Santa Clara County. We've had great success working in Santa Clara County. They were receptive to partnering with us to address this. But just last week, we got word that the LA District Attorney's Office is stepping up, and they want to meet with us this week, and they may take the lead role, which is important because the boiler rooms are operating in LA County. So it's something that we're going to be working with tomorrow with our peace officers. What we have done is we've identified 4 staff that are going to focus strictly on the HVAC groups that are causing the most significant harm. We've got the bank records. We've in fact got 4,700 pages of checks, which is just staggering if you look at it. And what you see is they're called out under a $49 duct cleaning or a $49 heating and air conditioning tune-up. You'll see that check for $49, and then you got one following it that's for $5,000 or $10,000, sometimes up to $100,000. So you'll have 2 or 3 checks to follow it. So we've been able to identify literally hundreds of victims. We are working with the Better Business Bureau on this. And our goal, though, is to identify 80 of the most significantly harmed consumers. And with the 4 dedicated investigators that will be involved in this task force that have been identified, and this will kick off, I should say, on September 1, they're each going to receive 20 cases. And the goal would be to go out and interview those 20 consumers during the month of September, write those cases up in October. So we're real excited about it. We are partnering with the LA Police Department. We've got the FBI involved for the telemarketing fraud. I've learned things myself in being involved in this task force. And one is that for telemarketers, you have to be registered. And if you're not, every call you make is illegal. And if it's illegal, then the FBI has jurisdiction for wire fraud. So that's the part they play. Thank you.
Boy, that's great news. Okay, are there any questions on that report? I jumped out of order. Oh, you want to show a video? Oh, yeah, I guess. Well, I jumped out of order. Can we get the sunset review report? Steve, you're up. Sunset review report, agenda item.
You heard the wrap. Any of the committee members have any input? I will be sending out another draft in an email. You'll have a chance to, probably a couple times. I'll just focus on the recommendations, though, not the body of the work. I'll continue to refine the recommendation page, and hopefully a week or 2 before the board meeting, you'll have the final recommended report. So that's the plan. So any questions or comments, Pastor?
You know, I was really impressed with the work that staff has done on this, including yourself. And even though I've been on the board a couple of years, I really learned a lot as I was reviewing it. One thing I wanted to know so that we could, as a board member reviewing this, if you could probably give us some type of lens that the committee is going to be looking at the report. I mean, what kind of things, I know they gave you a whole list of questions that you've answered, but what do you think is going to be important to them, or what kind of perspective should we be looking at as we read this or review the report?
Well, let me give you a little history. Sunset Review started in Colorado in the 80s, and they were basically, as regulatory agencies started to proliferate, having boards for aerobics instructors and travel agents and barbers, cosmetologists, on and on. You know, they started saying, should we keep regulating all these businesses? Let's figure out a way to sunset the law. I mean, there are other examples where there were boards that were regulating things for 40 or 50 years that really didn't exist anymore. So how do we get rid of these laws? So They set up this system where, as of a certain date, that program, that regulatory scheme ceases to exist. So they're basically trying to deregulate parts of the business community. So they started that in California, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. They went through it a couple times. They got rid of the board for fabric care, the dry cleaning board. They got rid of a couple other, they got rid of the low-hanging fruit. They tried to get rid of the barber board, that the politics behind barbering, you wouldn't believe how complex it is. So they deregulated a couple of industries. Then the sunset review process switched to, okay, we won't get rid of the industry because we've done that, so we'll get rid of the board, which means we'll make it a bureau. So the change to say we don't like the way a board is operating, we'll get rid of the executive officer and the board members and have the Department of Consumer Affairs take it over as a bureau. Well, they did that to barber and cosmetology, and 4 years later, they created it back into a board again. So that model went along for a while. And then, early days of the Schwarzenegger administration, the legislature pretty much didn't want to do it anymore because they'd done, you know, they revisited every board. No one wanted to serve on the committees. When they had committees, they never attended the meetings because they covered everything. But the administration at that time didn't want to give it up. So in its current form, it's become more of, I would personally call it a performance audit. You know, it gives the legislature an opportunity to look in detail about how a board is operating. Then they can make legislative recommendations about how they might want the board to change its operations. A good example is the medical board, where first they took away the investigators from the medical board and put them under the Attorney General, who reluctantly took them. Now they took the investigators and put them under the Division of Investigation. Those are the kinds of things the legislature can do. In my personal opinion, most of those things end up making things worse. They don't get at the core problem, but those are examples. So it's become more of a performance audit, giving the legislature the opportunity to make input on how a board operates. For us, there aren't any real issues. You can tell from our performance. Most of the things that we needed taken care of in Sunset Review were done in 2001, 2002, 2003. John, you're probably the only one here that remembers, but we totally re-engineered enforcement, totally re-engineered licensing. We upgraded our testing and licensing and public affairs. So that decade was when all the heavy lifting was done. So I could say with confidence, I think the legislature has confidence in the board members, the staff, the programs. I think we generally have the support of labor and the industry. So we're right now in a good place. So for us, next year is probably, you know, looking at small things, explain this to us, the underground economy, what can we do to better fight the underground economy? And then some of the proposals, hopefully, that we'll put in the recommendations will gain some traction. So I would guess, from my personal perspective, that's probably how it will play out.
Well, that's very helpful, believe me, because I think that, you know, the way it's written, it is like a performance report or audit, reporting of all the positive things and new initiatives that the board has undertaken, and presented with facts and statistics, which I think is very, very good. I think the opportunity to ask the board for some recommendations, which you have provided us to do, I think that's very, very good and helpful. So I had a list of different things, that basically formatting issues, that maybe I could just email them to you and.
Sure, we are going to reformat. We finally got a graphic designer after a few months, and she's already looking into how to format it so it's easier to read. So again, if anyone has any specific, you see something, you have a question or comment, a problem with, just email me or Cindy, and we'll take a look at it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, but primarily for Mr. Folk. On page 50, it's the enforcement statistics. Just on the disciplinary actions, the length of time, the average days to complete, what happens with the licensees pending the completion of any disciplinary actions taken against them?
Well, the timeframes are quite lengthy. It's not from the investigative standpoint, but from the appeal process. And so what happens is they can continue to contract. The disciplinary action itself will not preclude them from continuing to contract through the appeal. If it's a contractor that's posing a threat and you don't want them to continue to contract, then you would need to pursue an injunction, or often we're able to get the license suspended through a bond payout.
Wonderful.
I think it is important, David, you want to explain the disclosure requirement, though? So,
Yes, for a licensee, when a citation is issued, it's disclosed from the date it's mailed to that contractor for a period of 5 years. For an accusation, it's disclosed from when that accusation is requested. However, we can disclose earlier on. We're very fortunate that the construction industry got together and said that if we have a problem contractor, you don't need to rush the investigation. When you believe that you're going to file an accusation that will result in suspension or revocation of the license, you can disclose it from that point forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, Chief Foat will introduce a video we'd like to show the committee.
Thank you. We're very proud of this video. What you're going to see is some footage from an undercover operation that we did locally, but also an undercover operation last week that came about because of an LA deputy city attorney that initially brought this to us. We didn't realize how big a problem we had, and so we were referring cases to LA city attorney, and they were prosecuting some of these offenders with misdemeanors. Well, he brought it to my attention initially and said, this is much more serious than I can handle. It needs to be prosecuted by a DA. These are felonies. Interestingly enough, his parents began getting calls from them. And so he was only too happy to invite them out to his parents' house. So you're going to see that undercover. Gina Controla's here with us, and she was at that sting. She initially was going to play the part of their daughter and handle the sting, but they decided they wanted to do it themselves, as I understand it. But I guess we got some really good material.
How's the unit check out?
Unit checks out. It's got an 18-degree temperature difference between return and supply, and the unit's 100% functional. So I took this wire off the capacitor. I'm going to loosen the terminals to look like it just fell off, so that it slides on and off real easy, and so that it looks like it just fell off.
Boom! You gotta buy. That's 2.5 tons, $2,200 for a new compressor. But if I were you, I'd get the whole shoot match.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I guess I'll get the bid.
and you gotta get the ductwork too, so like I said, you're looking at close to 11,000, maybe even more. We're usually in the middle. We're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive.
It had a wire that fell off of it,
Oh,
and I was able to fix the unit for very cheap, $55 for a wire and a connector.
put a compressor in there, it still wouldn't work. Okay. It might work a little bit better, but not much. Okay. So, my ultimate solution for you guys would be to replace it if you want something in here that's gonna be reliable.
Basically what we're gonna do today, like I told you, we came today to clean your air ducts. First of all, just keep that in your mind. Air duct cleaning should be done usually every year to 18 months. Okay, now basically what we're gonna do today, we're gonna connect a big vacuum machine to one of the vents at the house that will suck all the loose dust. The system is pretty good. But let me tell you something like this. As far as I see and as far as I know, fixing it will cost more money rather than replace it, because they need to go and search for a gas leak. They need to come over here to take this apart, to take it to a lab later on to get back, to install it from new. I can tell you by guarantee that it will cost you more money fixing it.
You're looking inside to see what's going on with the condenser, right? Yeah.
There is a problem, I can already tell you. The condenser, there's a lot of water on the tube,
On the what?
on the tubing.
The tubing on the condenser,
That tells
yeah.
me a few things. That might be that the coil is clogged.
Uh-huh,
Maybe there's a freon leak.
uh-huh.
Capacitor is old, contactor is old. Everything I have to take into consideration, and also the fact that the unit is from 1992.
The unit was made in 1992?
Was installed in 1992.
Installed in 92?
When did you buy the house?
Oh, we've had the house 50 some odd years, yeah, yeah.
So we need to take out the coil,
Mm-hmm,
do coil cleaning
mm-hmm.
and sanitation.
That's the coil in the heater, above
Above
the
the
heater.
heater. So we do condenser foam wash. This is 395, right?
Mm-hmm,
Also, what we do, the motor compressor vent, we clean and lubricate.
mm-hmm.
Then, we're gonna need to put Freon, at least 4 pounds. It will cost you $320. And we need to replace capacitor. Replace contactor. $175. And install a booster. Booster helps the system to operate. In your case, in a system that old, you need it. That's what it will cost you.
That's $1,720.
That's an overall,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Your other option
yeah.
is to install a new condenser
Mm-hmm,
and a new coil.
mm-hmm.
Biggest benefit, of course, it's new.
Yeah, it's only,
So you're not going to breathe Freon anymore. You're going to breathe Puron because the new system don't come with Freon. Freon is a toxic gas. It's eliminated. It's going to be phased out
mm-hmm.
within 2 years. You won't be able to get Freon. So you buy now a new condenser and a new coil.
Mm-hmm.
Works on Puron. Everything will cost you with installation,
Mm-hmm.
with taxes, with the bubble wrap, $4,900.
Well, unfortunately, that's probably happening since this meeting started for the Enforcement Committee. It probably happened 10,000 times in the state of California, that very thing, at least. And the investigators that are sitting in this room today are just but a small portion of what we would really need to completely stop that. That's why the Public Affairs Committee comes in and is so important to educate the public that this goes on, and I know that's going to happen as well. Would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes.
You're the one, lead investigator.
Right, I just want to add that I just want to add that the IE came a week prior and checked out the HVAC, and he stated that it worked perfectly fine. The only thing is that it had dirty filters. So from that stemmed 2 bids. We called out an unlicensed contractor, and then the second was a licensed contractor, which was, and that's our problem child. And both of the bids were over $3,900. Do you have any questions? I just wanted to add that.
That was the condenser unit, the evaporative cooler that was on the roof? that
Yes,
the cameras
that's a
on?
Tarzana one.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I had a question. What, do we have any idea what the actual cost of those repairs for the cleaning and fixing the capacitor would have really been?
Replacing the filters would have been under $100.
Thank you very much. You have to, yeah, that just plainly shows that the $100 would have cured that problem, and they were trying to charge her thousands of dollars, which is ludicrous, obviously. Are there any further public comment on this issue? If not, the Enforcement Committee will stand adjourned. Next, Public Affairs, 5 minutes.